Here's something nobody tells you about the samurai. The version everyone knows: honor, bushido, swords, loyalty unto death. That part is real. But it is not the whole story. Because the single most important day in samurai history, the battle that decided who ruled Japan for the next 264 years, was not won by honor. It was won because one nervous man on a hill could not make up his mind. And then somebody made the decision for him, with cannon fire. In 1598, the most powerful man in Japan died. His name was Toyotomi Hideyoshi. And before he died, he had done almost the impossible. Over the course of roughly 3 decades, he unified Japan after more than a century of brutal civil war between rival warlords, the daimyo, each commanding armies of samurai. Hideyoshi was not born into power. He started as a foot soldier, and somehow, through ruthless intelligence and raw ambition, he climbed all the way to the top of Japan's warrior class. That alone should have been the end of the story. It wasn't, because Hideyoshi made one final decision that put everything he built on a knife edge. His heir, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, was only 5 years old. Historians are divided on whether Hideyoshi truly believed a 5-year-old could hold together a country he had spent decades unifying, or whether he simply had no better option and hoped for the best. Most lean toward he knew it was dangerous and did it anyway. To hold the country together, Hideyoshi appointed 5 senior regents to govern Japan until the boy came of age. That sounds orderly. It was not. A council of 5 of the most powerful armed men in the country is not a long-term peace plan. It is a countdown. And the most powerful of those 5 regents was Tokugawa Ieyasu. By this point, Ieyasu was in his mid-50s. He had survived hostage-taking, betrayal, crushing defeats, and decades of war by mastering one thing better than anyone else alive: patience. He did not rush. He waited. He watched. He endured. While others burned themselves out, Ieyasu quietly gathered land, allies, and power. By the time Hideyoshi died, he already controlled more land and more samurai than any of the other regents. And almost immediately, he started testing how far he could push the rules. Hideyoshi's dying orders had forbidden the regents from arranging marriages between their clans without approval from the full council. It was a safeguard, a way to prevent one man from quietly building a coalition strong enough to take over. Ieyasu ignored it. Within months, he began arranging marriages anyway. That was the first warning sign. The man who noticed it first was Ishida Mitsunari. Mitsunari was brilliant. He was also deeply unpopular. A gifted administrator, a loyal supporter of the Toyotomi family, and exactly the kind of man who sees a threat before everyone else does, he began quietly gathering allies who feared what Ieyasu was building. By 1600, Japan had split in everything but name. On one side stood Ieyasu, and the daimyo aligned with him. They became the Eastern Army. On the other stood Mitsunari, and the clans loyal to the Toyotomi cause. They became the Western Army. Neither side publicly claimed to be overthrowing the child heir. Both sides said they were protecting Japan. Both sides were lying. And by autumn, roughly 160,000 armed men were on a collision course with one foggy valley. The valley was Sekigahara. It sat on one of the main roads between eastern and western Japan, which meant it was not just a battlefield. It was a choke point. Whoever controlled it controlled the spine of the country. On the night of October 20th, 1600, the Western Army arrived first. About 80,000 men under Mitsunari took the high ground around the valley in a horseshoe formation. On paper, it was an excellent position. In practice, it should have been devastating. Military historians have long agreed on one thing. If you only look at the terrain, the Western Army should have won. Then, Ieyasu's Eastern Army marched in below them the next morning. About 75,000 men moved into the valley floor, and then the fog closed in. Thick, heavy, blinding fog. In the early hours of the battle, visibility was so poor that some units reportedly could not tell friend from enemy unless they were almost face to face. Historians studying eyewitness accounts note that some of the first skirmishes may have involved units accidentally firing on their own allies, which honestly is a very fitting way for this battle to begin. But the real problem was not the fog, it was a hill. More specifically, the man on it. On a hill called Matsuo, overlooking the battlefield, sat a young daimyo named Kobayakawa Hideaki. He commanded around 15,000 to 16,000 men. That made him one of the most important forces on the entire field. Kobayakawa had officially pledged loyalty to Mitsunari and the Western Army. He had also been secretly negotiating with Ieyasu's camp. So before the battle even truly began, everyone understood the danger. If Kobayakawa attacked for the west, the Eastern Army could be crushed. If he switched to the east, the Western Army could collapse. If he stayed still too long, the entire battle could turn into a disaster for everyone. And that is exactly what happened. Kobayakawa was young. Some accounts suggest he was barely 20. And at the biggest moment of his life, he froze. His troops sat on the hill while the battle below raged on. He watched. He waited. He did nothing. Mitsunari, down on the valley floor, kept sending signals. Smoke, flares, messengers, anything to force Kobayakawa to commit. Because everybody knew the truth. Those 16,000 men on that hill could decide the entire battle. And still Kobayakawa did not move. Hour after hour passed. The fighting below grew bloodier. The battlefield grew louder. But the hill remained silent. Then Ieyasu lost patience. He was watching the same thing everyone else was watching. A battle he needed to win was turning into a slow-moving disaster because one young commander could not choose a side. So Ieyasu made a decision that would become one of the most famous moments in samurai history. He ordered his gunners to fire on Kobayakawa's position. Here is where the joke ends. Because what happened next did not just decide a battle, it decided the future of Japan. The cannon fire aimed at Kobayakawa's hill was not meant to kill him. It was a threat, a signal, a final push. Choose now or be treated as an enemy. And it worked. Almost instantly, Kobayakawa gave the order. His men charged down the hill, but not toward Ieyasu, toward the Western Army, toward the side he had supposedly been fighting for all morning. The betrayal hit like a hammer. The Western Army, already locked in brutal combat, suddenly took a full-scale attack from the flank it had spent the entire day assuming was safe. The formation cracked, then it broke. And once it broke, the whole battle began to collapse. Men who had been holding the line panicked. Units fell apart. Other daimyo, seeing Kobayakawa switch sides in real time, made the same cold calculation and followed him. One betrayal became many. And what had been a hard-fought, almost even battle became a rout. Fast. Ishida Mitsunari fled the field. He was captured days later, reportedly hiding in a cave and suffering from severe dysentery that had plagued him through the campaign. The man who had spent months organizing resistance against Tokugawa Ieyasu ended his life on the run. Too sick to travel far, too late to escape. He was taken to Kyoto and executed by beheading only weeks after the battle. According to multiple accounts, he faced death without fear. Historians are divided on how differently Japanese history might have unfolded if Kobayakawa had chosen the West, or had simply decided sooner. Most agree on one thing. Sekigahara is a brutal reminder that enormous historical outcomes can hinge on one very human moment of hesitation. The death toll was staggering. Between 30,000 and 40,000 men are estimated to have died in a single day. For one battle, that was enormous. For Japan's samurai class, it was devastating. And Kobayakawa Hideaki? He did not enjoy his reward for long. He died in 1602, less than 2 years after the battle, at around 20 years old. Later accounts suggested guilt, instability, and regret, though historians warn that some of those stories may be moralizing legends written after his death. What is not disputed is this: his family line ended almost immediately afterward, and history remembered him as the man whose hesitation decided a nation. So what did Sekigahara actually create? 3 years later, in 1603, Tokugawa Ieyasu was formally named shogun by the emperor. That meant the title of supreme military ruler. In practice, it meant he now ruled Japan. The Tokugawa Shogunate that followed would last for 264 years. That is not just a dynasty, that is an era. And it began with one battlefield decision. The peace the Tokugawa brought was real. After a century of civil war, Japan finally stopped tearing itself apart. But that peace came with a price. The new government built a rigid class system. It crushed dissent, it controlled movement, and eventually it imposed sakoku, national isolation. Starting in the 1630s, Japan was sealed off from almost all outside contact for more than 2 centuries. Trade was tightly restricted. Travel was heavily controlled. Japanese citizens were forbidden from leaving the country under threat of death. It was stability, but it was controlled stability. Historians generally treat this as a real trade-off, not a simple villain story. The Tokugawa peace ended generations of bloodshed, but it also slowed Japan's political and technological development and left the country badly exposed when the outside world finally forced its way back in. That moment came in 1853. American Commodore Matthew Perry sailed steam-powered warships into Tokyo Bay and forced Japan to reopen to foreign trade. After more than 220 years of near-total isolation, the shock was enormous. Japan had to confront just how far the world had moved while it had been locked behind its own walls. The result was the collapse of the Tokugawa system within 15 years and the start of Japan's rapid, painful transformation into a modern industrial power. And all of it, the peace, the isolation, the shock, the collapse, traces back to one foggy battlefield and one young commander who could not choose a side until cannon fire chose it for him. Sekigahara was not just a battle. It was the moment Japan's future got decided. The samurai class would survive in ceremonial form for centuries after that, before being officially abolished in the 1870s as Japan modernized its military. But the age they ruled had already been decided on that one day in the fog. If you made it this far without flinching, hit subscribe. We decode a new catastrophe every week, and it only gets more chaotic from here.